The Agenda Setter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is the 17th of December, 2025, and today's news is just packed with a theme that pops up again and again in the UPSC exam, that delicate push and pull between our core institutions. So let's dive right in and see how this and a few other key issues are going to shape your prep. So, in this session, we're not just going to skim the headlines. No, our whole mission here is to really deconstruct today's news. We're going to connect every single topic directly to your UPSC syllabus and try to figure out the kind of questions the exam might actually throw at you. Because at the end of the day, this is all about turning all this info into marks that'll actually win you the exam. Okay, so here's the game plan for today. We're going to kick things off with governance, then we'll zoom out to the economy and global strategy. After that, we'll look to the future with climate and tech, and then ground ourselves in some crucial social issues. And the best part, we're going to tie it all together at the end with a really clear action plan for your studies. All right, first up, a theme that, let's be honest, never gets old for UPSC, that delicate balance of power between the executive and the judiciary. I mean, this is a foundational pillar of our democracy, and today, it is right back in the spotlight. So what's the story here? Well, if you've read the editorials today, you'll see they're highlighting this growing friction over some really key appointments. We're talking about disputes in picking vice chancellors for universities, these constant delays in filling up tribunal vacancies, and of course, the ongoing debates about the powers of governors. And look, this isn't just some political back and forth, it hits right at the integrity and the smooth functioning of our core institutions. Now, for your exam, this maps directly onto GS Paper 2. You've got to zero in on keywords like separation of powers, federalism, constitutional bodies, and governance. Seriously, when you make your notes, these should be your headings. And this is a perfect example of how current affairs connect right back to your static syllabus. The core concept, of course, is the doctrine of separation of powers. The legal foundation? Well, that comes from landmark Supreme Court cases like the Madras Bar Association series, which really fought for the independence of tribunals. And today's news? Well, that gives you the real-world context of how these big principles are being tested right now. So let's just cut to the chase. How does this actually affect your exam? Okay, for prelims, it's all about the facts. You've got to have the key constitutional articles for the judiciary and the governor on your fingertips. And you absolutely need to know your landmark judgments like Nabam Ribia. But for mains in the interview, you need to be ready for the big debate. Is this a case of judicial overreach, or is it about essential executive accountability? How does it strain federal relations? These are the analytical angles that are going to get you the high scores. All right, let's switch gears and focus on the economy. Here, we're looking at these twin challenges of managing India's own growth while trying to navigate what is a very, very complex global landscape. We've got two big stories happening. On the domestic front, you have the RBI, which is basically walking a tightrope. Inflation is cooling down a bit, but the growth recovery is still pretty uneven. And then, on the global stage, India is playing this very careful game of what we call multi-alignment. Balancing relationships with different powers to protect our strategic autonomy in a world that's getting more and more divided. This slide here really breaks down the exam relevance perfectly. For the RBI's policy, that's your GS Paper 3. Prelims will test you on terms like MPC, that's the Monetary Policy Committee that sets interest rates, and the differences between CPI and WPI inflation. Means, on the other hand, is going to want you to analyze that tough inflation versus growth dilemma. Then for strategic autonomy in GS Paper 2, Prelims loves its acronyms, right? So BRICS, Quad, get those down. But Means will expect a much more nuanced essay on India's evolving role in the world. Okay, let's shift gears again, this time to two areas that are literally defining our future: climate change and artificial intelligence. And remember, UPSC isn't going to look at these as just science topics, right? You need to see them as being central to governance, to the economy, and to our ethical future. Two major debates are really heating up. First, in the climate space, there's this huge gap between the money that was promised by developed nations and what's actually being delivered for climate adaptation. It's a massive shortfall. And second, in tech, as AI just gets more and more powerful, the call for some strong ethical guardrails and actual regulation is getting a lot louder. Both of these topics fall squarely under GS Paper 3. For your prelims, you'll want to lock down institutions like the Green Climate Fund and be aware of key global regulations like the EU AI Act, which is kind of setting a global benchmark. But for mains, the questions get much deeper. On climate, it's all about justice and equity. And on AI, it's about that really complex intersection of technology, ethics, and of course, data privacy. And now we're moving to our final content section. We're going to look at a critical social issue, education, And then, this is the most important part, we're going to connect all the dots from today's discussion. This synthesis, this ability to connect things is absolutely key for high-scoring means answers. The big story in the social sector today is definitely education. Now, we've achieved these amazing high enrollment rates, which is fantastic news. But recent reports are flagging a really serious problem. The learning outcomes, what kids are actually learning, are not keeping pace. And this raises some tough questions about how the National Education Policy 2020 is being implemented. The game has completely changed. It's not just about getting kids into school anymore. It's about what they're actually learning inside. This is a classic GS Paper 2 topic. For prelims, you've got to know the key features of NEP 2020 like the back of your hand. For mains, you should be framing your answers around the challenges to human capital formation. And for your interview, you need to be prepared with a balanced opinion. How do we shift the focus from just counting heads in classrooms to ensuring genuine learning outcomes? Okay, so we've broken down the news into pieces. Now let's do what the toppers do. Let's build it back up. The highest scoring answers in mains don't just list facts. They weave different topics together into these powerful, coherent themes. Let's see exactly how that works. So our first connection is what we can call institutional accountability. That friction over appointments we started with, it isn't just a polity issue. Think about it for a second. A delayed tribunal appointment could stall a major economic project. A politically appointed vice chancellor could totally derail education policy. It's all about ensuring the checks and balances that support good governance across the board. Second, let's connect the economy to social issues under this theme of growth with inclusion. Okay, the RBI's monetary policy manages inflation, but why does that matter for students sitting in a classroom? Well, because stable, predictable economic growth is what ultimately funds our social programs and creates an environment where families can actually invest in a quality education for their kids. Economic stability has to translate into stronger human capital. If it doesn't, it's all just numbers on a page. And finally, let's talk about climate justice as diplomacy. You see, India's strong stance on climate finance isn't just about the environment. It's a really powerful tool in our foreign policy toolkit. By demanding accountability, finance, and technology transfer from the developed world, India is cementing its role as a leader of the global south, and that directly reinforces its strategic autonomy on the world stage. See how it all connects? So we've analyzed the news, we've connected the themes, but what do you do with all this information right now? Well, here is your direct, actionable guide for today. It's really simple. First, for prelims, go back right now and revise the key terms we highlighted today. MPC, Quad, Green Climate Fund, NEP 2020. Get them down cold. Second, for mains, just try to structure an answer using those inner linkages we just talked about. And third, for the interview, start thinking about your own informed opinions on these complex trade-offs. And to get you started right away, here is a practice question for you, pulled directly from today's analysis. Take 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, and try to frame a structure for this answer. Examine the implications of executive-judiciary tensions on constitutional governments in India. So I want to leave you with this thought. The newspaper, it gives you the raw material, the information. But it's your analysis, your ability to link a governance issue with an economic outcome, or a climate policy with a diplomatic strategy. That's what provides the answers that UPSC is really looking for. So keep reading, and more importantly, keep connecting those dots.